Welcome to the home of Grand Canyon hiking. This is the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show presented by Bright Angel Outfitters for canyon and rim-to-rim specific gear and apparel and tons of free resources to help you plan your adventure. Visit us at brightangeloutfitters.com. We exist to help you hike your best hike. Now, let's talk some canyon. Well, it was an idea on an uneventful Saturday night. Throw it out to our Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show Facebook group that I was looking for someone to do a podcast with, but it had to be right then and right there. So I had no idea what we were going to get. I'm Brian Special, and this is the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show presented by Bright Angel Outfitters. The first person to respond that Saturday night was a man from Minnesota. He'd been out shoveling snow when the call went out, and all I knew about him was what he'd written in the comment to my post. His name is Howie Schomer. He's 56, married, a father of 4, was just blessed with his first grandchild, is an independent insurance agent, and somehow, over the last 19 years or so, has developed a passion for the Grand Canyon that keeps him going back time after time. What he's learned along the way that we can all learn from and be inspired by on an impromptu episode of the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show presented by Bright Angel Outfitters. Okay, this is something we have never tried before. Put out this message on Facebook just a few minutes ago and said, basically the first person to respond, let me know if you're available right now on a Saturday night. It is 7:22 Arizona time, so 9:22 Eastern right now. And sure enough, Howie Schomer, is that how you say your name, Howie?
Yes.
Howie Schomer from Minnesota. Where in Minnesota?
Piers, Minnesota.
Where's that at?
About an hour and a half northwest of the Twin Cities.
Okay. That sounds very, very cold here in the middle of February. So Howie responded to my post on Facebook, and all he said, this is all I know about Howie. He said he's done the canyon, been to the bottom 15 times, 3 times in the last year. He lives in Minnesota, as he told you, and he has used Coach Arnie's methods, his training methods, because he's a Flatlander living in Minnesota. So obviously it's a little bit tougher to train when you don't have access to a lot of elevation. So that is really all I know about Howie, except he did mention one other thing right as we got on here. He's like, I was just outside shoveling snow. So that's all I know about Howie. So you've been shoveling snow tonight, huh?
Well, I've been using my tractor with a loader and a snowblower.
Man, it's a different world. All we do is shovel sunshine out here in Arizona.
That's for sure.
And that's probably why you've been out here so many times. Okay, so 15 times to the bottom. That just begs the question, Howie. How does a guy living an hour and a half north of the Twin Cities, dealing with the harsh winters, yet you somehow obviously have fallen deeply, deeply in love with the Grand Canyon enough to be here 15 times? How did this all start? How did this all happen?
So back in 2006, I got an invitation from my uncle and his son, my cousin, to join them to go to the bottom of Grand Canyon. They had a third person in their party have to back out a couple months before their trip. So they asked me if I'd be interested, and I'm like, sure, I'll give it a shot. So this is around August, September of 06. And I started training. And
when was the hike going to be? You heard about it in August.
The hike was the middle of November.
Okay, so you had about 3 months to get ready for it.
Yeah, yep. And so back then I just did a lot of stairs, and there's a fairly decent hill near me, so I did a lot of stairs and hill. And yeah, when the weather wasn't good, did a lot of just step ups and step downs off of boxes, and just increased my weight gradually, and that's how my training has been ever since. Is a lot of that stuff, and it's probably been closer to 18 or 20 times I've been at the bottom, but I've lost track. But there's a fire tower about 20 miles from here, which is 133 steps to get to the top of it. And so when it's summertime, warmer weather, when it's open, because obviously this time of year they close them out here. That was a place I'd go up and down that thing. I'd work up to do like 12, 13 times shortly before the trip would be.
So before that first one that you did in 2006, you obviously had some idea of what you were going to need to prepare for when you're talking about all these steps. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just because that's the only thing that you had available. Did you know you were going to have to be so strong in the steps, or did you figure that out later after you hiked the canyon for the first time and you're like, oh my God, these steps just never end?
The first time, I think that's a long time ago, but I'm sure I did some investigating of what it's going to need to train, to hike Grand Canyon. So um, it wasn't too bad. We were fairly slow going down and coming out because my uncle, he had a quadruple bypass like a year earlier. So he was taking it slow and easy. So I was, keeping an eye on him. My cousin that I went with, he liked to hike a little faster, and he would oftentimes take off and then wait for us to catch up to him. But it was all good. I fell in love with it. I've gone back on the average every year and a half since then, up until the last couple of years. Then the average has increased. Like I said, this past year, I went 3 times this past year.
What was the hike that you did on that first one?
The first one, we took South Kaibab down to Phantom, spent 2 nights down there, and then hiked out Bright Angel. And for the day trip at the bottom, we hiked up to Ribbon Falls. The last day, we hiked out Bright Angel.
Okay, so the first time you do a rim to river, an advanced rim to river, because you had the night at Phantom Ranch and you went all the way to Ribbon Falls and back, which is a long way. So tell me, when you went down, you were doing it in November, right? Which I always say, if you ever listen to the podcast, you know that I always say November is the absolute best time to be in the canyon. You probably agree with me, having done it. But you were doing it at the best time of the year. So on your way down South Kaibab, were you guys able to start in the daylight? Were you able to enjoy those iconic views? And what were those like from someone coming from Minnesota seeing them for the first time?
Yeah, it was daylight. We didn't have to get too early of a start, because didn't have to worry about the heat and that kind of stuff. But I'd been to the canyon twice before, but not below the rim. So I've kind of seen some of the views, but it's just another world when you go below the rim. When you set foot below and start taking in everything that's below, it's just awesome.
What's your favorite part of South Kaibab? What do you remember especially about that first trip?
Yeah, just when you get down to Cedar Ridge, and then you can go and look to the west.
Yeah.
Towards you see the Bright Angel Trail off in the distance. You see the Tonto down below you, and it's like, yeah, I remember that, especially. It was just like, that's just amazing. I mean, nothing really stuck out to me greatly, but I always enjoy. We didn't stop at tip off to eat. We kept walking, and the spot I'm talking about, I'm sure we stopped a couple hundred yards below tip off and just sat and had lunch looking over the river. There's a switchback there that we just sit there, and that's where we have our lunch. That's where I always stop to have lunch on the way down if possible.
Okay, so you spend the night at Phantom Ranch. You guys go all the way to Ribbon Falls. What did you think of Ribbon Falls? Was that worth that major effort that you had to do to go there and back on your off day?
Definitely. Yeah, because it was an oasis. You don't expect something like that at the bottom of Grand Canyon. You come upon that, and it's like, wow. Yeah, it was amazing.
So what was after the night at Phantom Ranch, what was the hike out of Bright Angel like? Because to this point, on the first 2 days, essentially, you've gone downhill from South Kaibab to Phantom, then a fairly flat hike, or at least it feels that way, to Ribbon Falls and back. Now you got to really put that work in. And as a Flatlander from Minnesota, I'm curious what that first ascent up Bright Angel, 4,480 vertical feet over about 10 miles. What was that like for you?
That's work.
Yes.
It's punishing. I definitely enjoy. I know a lot of people like saying, I hear them say they definitely like going up better than coming down, but I definitely do not like going up as much as coming down.
It's funny. People do say that all the time, don't they? It's like, oh, I like going up better than I like going. I'm gonna say baloney to that, right? I think people say that, but I honestly don't know if that's just recency bias or what. Because man, They're both hard in their own way, but going up is when you're putting all the cardio work in. And if you haven't done your work in advance, that's where you're going to run into trouble.
Yeah. Yep. And it's just never ending once you get to past halfway point. They have a Supai garden it is now, and you look and it's like, how in the world do we get out of here? You can't see the trail. And I look up there. I have a photo of myself looking up there, and it's like I have no idea how we're getting out, but we're just going to follow the trail. And it's crazy how they were able to get that trail in there. But it just, you get to the 3 mile rest house, and then it's like, we got another mile, 3 miles to go, a mile and I mean, it's just nonstop. It's just going up, and yeah, it's work, but I fell in love. I just loved the canyon after that. It's like I said, every year and a half I've gone since, and I really enjoy bringing people with that have never been there before. And so I've done that. I've brought, well, at least a dozen people that have never been there before with me since then. And this past February, I brought 3 guys that have never been there, 3 buddies of mine, and yeah, they loved it.
Hey, want to support the show? You'll find Grand Canyon and rim-to-rim themed apparel and more at brightangeloutfitters.com. While you're there, be sure to check out the Rim-to-Rim Pack, the day pack with front pockets that we designed with the canyon hiker in mind. It's all at brightangeloutfitters.com. We exist to help you hike your best hike. So how's the evolution of that gone from your first time? You've done it so many times since then. Did it advance into trips beyond rim to river? Did you start doing rim to rims? Did you camp at the bottom? What have you done since then?
The closest thing I've done for rim to rim, twice now, I've gone in from the North Rim. And once it was with a buddy, and it was in October, right before the North Rim closed. And we didn't get to go to the North Rim Lodge area, in the national park, because we stayed outside the park at Kaibab Lodge, and we got the shuttle in and went straight to the trailhead in the morning, and it was dark, and we hiked in down to Phantom, stayed 2 nights, and then hiked out Bright Angel. So that was a 3-day rim to rim. And then in 2022, I took my 2 sons and a nephew down, and we hiked down to, well, this was in August, so we stayed at Cottonwood the first night in the campground there, and then the second night we were scheduled to stay at Bright Angel at the bottom. We did have a meal reserved, but it was so blasted hot that after we ate our meal, we went and talked to a ranger about if there was any openings up at Havasupai Garden campground. And he told us there was at least one open campsite. So about 8 o'clock at night, because we decided it doesn't pay to just sit in our campsite, try to fall asleep. You can't sleep when it's so blasted hot. So we decided, instead of just laying there, not sleeping, we might as well hike to the next camp, up to Havasupai Garden. So 8 o'clock we left from the bottom. And by midnight, a little after midnight, we got to Havasupai Garden. And then we spent 2 nights there. But that was the hardest hiking I've ever done, because it was 90 degrees, and we've already hiked quite a ways that day before we even started our hike at 8 o'clock. And so that was the hardest hiking I've ever done in my life. And that's the first time I ever hiked at night too, the whole way up to it was an experience. It was epic. I'll never do that again, but it was fun to do with my 2 sons and nephew. So
I bet that was something. I bet that was a memorable one, taking your boys for the first time. What did they think of the place?
Well, actually, my 2 sons have each been there before, but we've never been there in the summer like that. And
never again. Yeah.
Yeah. And my nephew, that was the first time my nephew has ever been there. So, but yeah, we enjoyed it. We sat in the river a lot when we got down to, got in the canyon, both when we were at Cottonwood and then at the bottom, just laid in the river.
Has there ever been a time in all these trips where, I don't know, you were in a situation where you were struggling real bad, having problems, anybody you were with was struggling and having problems, any kind of stories like that?
I think back to a couple years ago, a friend of mine was with, and it was the first time he's been there, and we were hiking out the Bright Angel, and it was the typical trip. We went in South Kaibab, spent 2 nights, coming out Bright Angel, and we were getting
What time of year is this?
This was, I think it was around March.
Okay. So the heat's not an issue yet.
Might have been early February, actually.
So heat's definitely not an issue.
No, it was beautiful hiking weather. And all of a sudden, my friend pulls out his inhaler, and I'm like, I didn't know he had asthma, and we couldn't walk more than 100 steps, and he'd have to stop and take a break. And it was the longest it's ever taken us to get out because we had to take a break so often. But I felt great because I had good training, but because we did so slow, I never struggled. But he made it out, and he actually came with a second time a year later, so he was much better trained, and he didn't struggle as much the second time he came with. I think that was this past year.
Is that one of those situations, though, like if you're hiking in a group, no matter how big the group is, it can be 2 people, it can be 5 people, it can be 10 people, but him needing an inhaler caught you by surprise. And because that happened, suddenly when he started having issues, then you have to have issues alongside him, and it can really change the whole dynamic of a hike. So is that something you feel like should have been communicated beforehand, that you should have known that so that you could know that, well, at least in the back of your mind, something like that could happen? Is it, I just guess what I'm saying is in a group, you can't really over communicate. Everyone should know every possible pitfall along the way.
Yeah, I guess, that was his first time hiking too. He might not have been aware that, yeah, maybe should tell Howie that I have asthma and use an inhaler. And he definitely did train much better the second time he came with me, which was this past year. And so he didn't struggle nearly as bad. So
yeah, he learned his lesson. That happens, doesn't it?
He was a little undertrained. And then one other time, I went with another dad and his son. Our 2 sons were both seniors. We're all from Minnesota, so we were there in around April or May, which it's still plenty cool in Minnesota. But when we were there hiking, in the sun, we were above Havasu by Garden, and it's getting warm when you're hiking in the sun, as you know. It probably was 80 in the sun, I'm guessing.
That's no joke.
Bodies aren't acclimated yet, and the dad that was with us, he started to get nauseous, and we were at like the 3-mile rest house, and he was just not feeling good, and he had to take a long break. And as we got further and further along the trail, by the 1.5-mile rest house, he was shot, and his son ended up taking his pack and carrying both packs so that his dad didn't have a pack to carry. And we got probably another 1/2 mile past the 1.5-mile rest house after an extended break, and he just sat down on the side of the trail and just heaved water. He was just puking up water. And so I was like, first thinking, well, maybe he's dehydrated, but obviously he's not, if he's throwing up all this water. And it never occurred to me that he was in the beginning stages of heat exhaustion.
Canyon hiking can be hot and deadly, and shade can save your life. Be sure to plan your hike with our Grand Canyon Shade Tracker, a completely free tool that lets you see exactly where you'll have shade on your route every minute of every day of the year. Find the Grand Canyon Shade Tracker exclusively at brightangeloutfitters.com and hike your best hike.
So he took it easy. He rested for a while. My son my son had been there a few times, so he was like, Dad, I really got to use the bathroom. So I said, go ahead, leave. He hiked out. We were about 1 mile from the top, so he hiked out. And after he got about 15 minutes from us, I decided, you know what, it'd be good to have a ranger here. So I texted my son, hey, call 911 when you get to the top.
Oh, wow.
Get a ranger down here. Because I didn't want to take any chances that my friend was going to, suffer, heat stroke. So my son was just a little too timid when he got to the top. He's like, he was nervous about calling 911. So he never did contact a ranger. And we just slowly made our way out. And my son actually started walking back down the trail. He met us before we got to the top. And once we got to the top, that dad, he sat down, and in about a half an hour, he felt fine again. He was kind of back to normal. So I just think that his body wasn't acclimated to the heat yet, and he just suffered. So that was probably the scariest time that I've ever had on the trail with somebody that really struggled, you know.
Yeah, that is scary stuff, man.
Yeah.
Well, when you think you need to call a ranger, you know it's serious business. And man,
Yeah.
I'm glad he was okay. But the lesson there is that you just messing with the canyon in the heat, especially the ascent up Bright Angel or whatever trail you're ascending.
Yep.
And to your point, 70, 80 degrees and direct sun, that is going to feel miserable. So
Yeah.
very important to time your hike if you can, if you're experienced enough, if you use our Grand Canyon shade tracker. Very important, everybody, to time your hike so that you can hike out in shade if possible when it gets anywhere near temperatures like that, where heat exhaustion, heat stroke could be a threat, because you do not want to mess with that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about training, because this is really the only other part that I know about this about you. After I put out this call to, hey, let's do a podcast impromptu style, and you say that being a Flatlander in Minnesota, that you have found that Coach Arnie's methods have really helped you. How so?
Well, when I was training because I went a couple times before summer, and then I went with my two sons. We were going to go to Zion and then do 2 nights at Grand Canyon down North Kaibab back out. And when I was training for that trip, I stumbled across your podcast. I've never heard you before. So when I was training, I did a lot of listening to your podcast just to get amped up for the trip. And then I got to the episode where Coach Arnie was talking about walking backwards.
Yeah.
Walking uphill backwards and then pulling weight backwards. So I'm like, okay. And by this time, it was, I had found a cancellation for actually Thanksgiving dinner. That's when I went this past year. The last one was Thanksgiving. We hiked in. And as I was training for that, I thought, well, I'm not going to train with the steps anymore. I'm still going to do the hill once a week at least. But during the week, I decided I'm going to try doing the backwards walk. And so I found an old tire and hooked up a chain to it. And then I had a thick, wide nylon strap that I attached to the chain. And so I walked up and down my driveway pulling that tire. One time up and down is quarter mile. So
this is a serious driveway.
Yeah, and it's tarred, so it's not, so it's fairly smooth. But I, decided I'm gonna try this. I figured, it doesn't hurt to try something. If Coach Arnie was saying this is the way to do it, so I didn't do any steps for the Thanksgiving trip. I just walked backwards using that tire, and then I did the hill training once a week, and so I started out doing a half mile, just going up and down the driveway a couple times. And I worked up to about might have done 2.5 miles pulling that tire back and forth. And funny thing is about this, so it gets dark here, in early November in Minnesota, and a lot, you get home from work, it's dark, so it's like I don't want to be walking down my driveway and falling into the ditch. So one day I found an old paint can, and I put like a center line down the driveway so that I could walk backwards without having to keep turning around to see where I was going. I could just look down and see that, hey, I'm still in the center of the driveway.
Wow.
So my wife was gone when I did that, and she came home the next day and she's like, what in the world did you do? Put all these white dashes down the driveway. But I was like, hey, I don't want to have to keep turning around when I'm doing my training. And so yeah, so they're still there.
The Grand Canyon strikes again.
Yeah, so it worked great. I did that, tried to do that about every day, some backwards tire pulling. And
for how many months or weeks did you do that?
I did it probably about a month and a half.
That's a long time. That's commitment. Did it?
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, by the time you got done with that month and a half, how did you feel, and did it help on game day?
Oh, I talked to Arnie about Dr. Arnie about this before, uh, actually before my trip and then after my trip, and I felt great, you know. So it was different, but it's like it made sense on how it worked, you know, that resistance going backwards, and I didn't miss doing the steps going up and down, up and down, up and down. That gets monotonous. So
Did you notice a difference when you hiked?
I did. Yeah, I mean, I always felt like I was prepared. The older I get, the more training I did with the stairs and the hill next to my farm here. But I thought, well, if I'm not going to do the stairs, I'm going to, you know, go all in on this walking backwards with the tire thing. So I believe in it. I when I got done with my trip, we were on the way back to Phoenix, and I called Dr. Arnie and told him. I said that it worked.
I
So
love it.
he was pleased.
I love it. Arnie is he's such a gem. He cares so much.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's always talking about walking backwards, and to see it put into practice at that level, and then to see it have success, that feels good, I'm sure, to Arnie as well as it should. And kudos to you for trying something different, because you easily could have been like, you know, I've been in the canyon so many times. This works for me. I'm not going to try anything different. So kudos to you. It's never too late to try something new, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, I was just there in August, so I felt like I still had some base training. So I felt like if I don't do the stairs, and you know, it's not going to be the end of the world if I'm not the best trained for this one. But I felt it prepared me sufficiently to do the hike, and I went with a friend of mine who's been there twice with me before, but he took his oldest daughters with, and they've never been there, and they're younger. They're all in high school, and they did some serious training. They didn't do any backwards like I was, but they were doing a lot of steps and lunges and squats and things of that nature.
Are you in our Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show Facebook group yet? Well, join today and learn all the tips and tricks and hear about others' experiences on Rim to Rim and beyond. It's totally free. You'll have daily access to me, Coach Arnie, and just about every guest we've ever had on the show. All there to help you have your best possible Grand Canyon experience. Join the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show Facebook group and be inspired and informed, and get yourself Grand Canyon ready. So knowing all that, knowing all the different methods that you've used over all these hikes that you've done in the canyon, and the buildups and the training before each one of them, what do you think is the best thing that someone maybe who is a Flatlander like you and doesn't have a lot of access to elevation, what are the best things that they can do based on your experience to have success in the canyon?
Well, I'd say definitely that backwards pull with weight is,
and not necessarily going to the extent that you went to, but just doing it, right?
Yeah, just doing it. And I noticed that Dr. Arnie, he does stints where he does more weight, but not very far, more weight, fewer reps sometimes. So that's something that, I maybe would throw in the next time I'm going to be training for the canyon. So, but yeah, definitely you got to find a hill. You got to do, I did some squats, with weights. So just to build up those legs for the uphill climb. So, and I threw in some lunges too, but nothing serious. Mostly it was the backwards walking, and then on the weekends I do, 4 to 5 miles on a hill, up and down, up and down.
What about time on your feet, doing long hikes like on a weekend? Do you ever do that? Find that important?
I don't, not other than just my training. But when I'm doing, 4 or 5 miles on the hill, that's hour and a half, sometimes going up and down. So
you've done it so many times. Let me ask you this. Let me just ask you a little rapid fire stuff here, since I have no idea. You've done this so many times. What's the go-to item that you have to eat on a rim to rim, or on a rim to river, or on any canyon hike? What's the go-to item?
Oh, I bring jerky and trail mix in honor of a buddy of mine who he used to be in the military, and he did a rim to rim with me once with from North Rim to South Rim. That was the one that we did in October, and he's like, got to have potted meat. So if you know what potted meat is,
Potted meat, what is that?
it's kind of like pureed Spam, I would say, in a little can.
Oh
So I'll
no.
take I'll get one can of that, from the store before we hike in, just to in his honor.
So potted meat, but you won't just carry it. You'll actually eat it somewhere along the trail.
I'll eat it, the first meal and get it over with. But no, I stick with the jerky, like I said, trail mix. That's kind of it.
What about hydration? What do you do for that? What have you found works? Electrolytes and water and whatever else you drink.
Yeah, I used to take like a powdered Gatorade and use that for my electrolyte. But in the last year I've gone trying to get away from sugars and things like that. So I let's see, I think his name is Vinny Tortorich, and he's got a site that sells pure salt. So I took pure salt tablets. So I just pop those electrolyte capsules, and that's what I used.
You drink out of a bladder, out of bottles. What do you drink out
Both.
of?
Yep. I got a 3 liter water bladder, and then I'll bring a bottle too.
Do you always carry 3 liters? Because that's pretty heavy.
When it's warm, for sure. Yep.
And you always carry a filter with you. Have you ever had to use it?
I did. When I went in there in August this past year, the pipeline was shut down. So I had a filter, and one of my sons had a filter, and we had to filter water. We just stayed the one night, obviously, at Cottonwood, because we came down to Cottonwood and went back up. I was going to say about 6-7 years ago, I decided I want to do something. One thing that I've never done on each trip, do something new each time. So one time when we were hiking out, we got to Havasupai Garden, and I'm like, I've never gone to Plateau Point. It's like you're hiking out, 10 miles from Phantom to the rim. It's like, why would somebody want to put on an extra 3 miles?
Yeah.
But it's like, you know what? You never know if you're ever going to be back there again. So we hiked out to Plateau Point and loved it. We had our lunch out there, and I've done it every time since when we hiked out on Bright Angel, and that's where we have our lunch instead of sitting at the Havasupai Garden. We hike out to Plateau Point, and even though it's an extra 3 miles on our trip, it's an easy 3 miles because it's basically flat. And then we spend half hour or so out there having lunch, so it's worth it. That's such a great view.
It is incredible. Just overlooking the river, about 1,500 feet below. Incredible. And isn't it one of those things, Howie, that, I don't know, on the north side, Ribbon Falls, you might be tempted to skip it because the same thing, you don't want to add the extra miles. But, and then on the south side, going up Bright Angel, you might want to just skip Plateau Point, not even think about it because you're only interested in getting out of there. But they're both worth stopping and taking the side trip. They're pretty iconic locations.
Yeah, if you got the time, I'd say you got to do it.
Yeah. Okay, the last thing that I want to ask you. Okay. And I bet there are people out there who have listened to this and want me to ask you this, whether they know it or not. And that is that you have been there 18 to 20 times, I think we're up to now. How have you become such a master at snagging reservations below the rim? What is your secret?
Because I'd say half of the times that I've gone was from the lottery, to stay at Phantom. The other half,
you're just a lucky guy or what?
Yeah, I don't know. And the other half is just you got to be diligent and be on the website every day, 2-3 times a day if it takes that much to try to snag them. Yeah, it's just persistence on being on their website. That's how I got that trip in November, and it's like it was one day before. It was like 46 days. The trip would have been. So it's like I had one day to, I purchased it, and it's like I had a day to decide to get my full refund. And then I asked my friend, and he's like, "Yep, I want to take my daughters, before they're out of high school." And so he said, "I'm in." And we went down there, and the water was off, but they still made the best Thanksgiving meal that they could. It was amazing. It was top notch.
Talk about an unforgettable experience. What's the next trip you got planned? You got the next one on the horizon yet?
Well, since I was to the Southwest U.S. 4 times last year, so I kind of feel guilty if I would go again this year. So,
Yeah, what's your wife think of all this? What does your wife think of this obsession?
oh, she's fine. She's totally cool with it.
Does she go with you, or is she just ready to get you out of the house?
She's not a hiker. No, so she came to me with me once to Arizona, and she said that's enough. She likes the ocean, so she likes going east.
Okay. So she goes to the ocean, you go to the canyon. That seems like a fair trade-off.
Yeah. But Minnesota's got a national park I've never been to up on the border. It's Voyagers. So I think my goal is to go up there this year.
I think
Not
that's
much,
fair.
not much hiking, but there's a lot of water. So I think I'll be doing a lot of canoeing. But
That sounds a little bit more affordable, a little bit more convenient. Yeah, maybe give the canyon a year off, and then you'll be even more excited to come back next time, right?
yeah. But I also am going to put in on early March. You can apply for the lottery for the cables on Half Dome at Yosemite.
Yeah.
So I'm going to apply for that and try to get the permit to hike the cables on Half Dome.
Well, with your luck and your persistence, I don't doubt you, Howie. Thank you so much for doing this, literally at a moment's notice. Because again, I put this out to the Facebook group, less than an hour ago, and I said, is it a boring Saturday night for everybody? Who wants to come on the podcast? Yeah, let me know, and we're just gonna get on and talk. And I'm so glad that we did, Howie, because this was everything that I hoped it would be. We got a lot of great information from you. I think a lot of great inspiration about just what it's like to come to the canyon and why everyone should put it on their bucket list. So thank you for doing this. We'll let you get back to your snow shoveling, which, again, I can't relate to out here in Phoenix. It sounds not so fun. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm done shoveling, but I have to go and fire up my outdoor wood furnace. So
Okay.
As cold it is, I have to fire up twice a day. So
Wow. What's the temperature out there right now?
right now it's probably 0 Fahrenheit.
Oh, wow.
And
It's a different world.
And I see that we're supposed to get into the negative 20s the next couple nights.
That makes me feel bad about complaining when it gets into the 40s and 50s here in Phoenix. But I'll keep that. You keep that, and you keep that passion for the canyon burning, Howie. And thank you so much for doing this. This was fun, my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate your podcast too. It's fun to listen to you.
That was Howie Schomer. It was after the interview that he mentioned his new grandson. So I threw out there that he'd have to let us know in about, 10 years or so when he takes him on his first big canyon hike. Howie, though, said no, it would be more like 7 years. Got to start him really young, and I cannot wait to hear about it. Well, always great to hear about the impact Coach Arnie is having from backwards walking and beyond. Coach is back to help this time with a very timely topic, considering we just talked to Howie, who's forced to train in frigid Minnesota. So here's Coach on training in the cold.
Hey guys, this is Coach Arnie with another Grand Canyon tip of the week. And once again, thank you, Brian, for allowing me to share some wisdom and hopefully make everybody's adventure that much more memorable. Today, I want to talk to you guys about cold weather training. This came to mind because I have some individuals that I'm working with that are actually getting ready for the canyon, and they're dealing with lots of snow and lots of cold weather, and it can be very depressing. It can be very frustrating. So we have to learn how to train, not just in a way that allows us to move, but there's other things involved with cold weather training that I think are important. And although you may be in an area of the country that you're not dealing with this, there are those that are. So I want to share some ideas with those individuals, and you never know. You might be in a situation as well, and this might be able to help you the same way. So here we go. First of all, like I said, it can be very, very depressing. But remember, there are indoor things you still can do. They're indoor treadmill, indoor cycling, all those things are beneficial. I promise you. They may not be the greatest, but they are beneficial. Be aware of proper hydration. When you're training in the cold, you have to still make sure you're properly hydrating. So you got to watch for things when you're out training as well, because you can still cramp, you can still have other issues. Also, certain meds, especially for those of us that are older, if you're on certain meds, those things could also affect your electrolytes and your hydration. So be aware of that as well, because as we get older, we got to be more thoughtful and mindful about these things. Get creative, dress appropriately, and find ways to challenge yourself. Don't sit back and just give into it. Find ways, get out there, working in the yard, walking around the street with the proper footwear on. You can walking in the yard, you can get a lot of work done. And here's what I know is that your body just knows it's working hard. So don't be afraid to get dressed well, put the right footwear on. Heck, you can get out there in even though it may not even be a sport, but you can walk around on snowshoes. There's so many ways that you can challenge yourself in the snow and the cold as well. And for those of you that are even more active, winter sports can be they can be a lifeline. Skiing, skimo, that's a new one, cross country skiing. These are all things that you can do and get super fit, and you can allow yourself to continue training hard for your canyon adventure. And lastly, just do your best. Don't panic. Just like those of us in the warm climates, when it becomes 110 or hotter, we may shut it all down. But the same goes for you guys. You don't have to shut it down. You can get creative and just do your best, and you will have a great canyon adventure. I love you guys. I'll talk to you later.
Coach Arnie Fonseca Jr., an exercise physiologist and a pillar of our Grand Canyon hiking community. His contact information is in the show notes. If you need help, please reach out to Coach. He wants to hear from you, and he will help you. Hey, I have a favor to ask you. Would you mind leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to the show? Those reviews really do help us get the show in front of those that need us, and your support is greatly appreciated. Please go leave a review today. Thank you so much. All right, that's it for now. My name is Brian Special, encouraging you, as always, to go hike the canyon. Take that first step. Embrace the journey. And when you get there, whether it's for time goals or taking your time, just hike your own hike and enjoy every step in the majestic Grand Canyon. We'll see you next time on the Grand Canyon Hiker Dude Show, presented by Bright Angel Outfitters.